Our next speaker spoke yesterday, but there are some new doctors in the room, so I do want to introduce her again. Dr. Worden is licensed in clinical nutrition, acupuncture, spinal manipulation, botanical medicine, counseling, homeopathy, neural therapy, prescriptive privileges, and other natural healing modalities. She specializes in unique medical therapies from Europe and around the world. Dr. Worden is a diplomat in the American Academy of Pain Management, and she is adjunct faculty at Arizona State University. She's on the board of directors of the Naturopathic Academy of Therapeutic Injections and the Naturopathic Physicians Board of Aesthetic Medicine. She is an international speaker and lecturer, radio and TV personality, CEO and owner of Worden Medical Specialties, and in the who's who of international business women. We are very happy to introduce to you again Dr. Donese Worden.
Okay, talk about an up-to-date talk. Before I get into this, I found some things last night that I think we need to talk about. As I was going to bed with my favorite bed partner, Scientific American magazine, and it's the brand new edition. I just want you to understand one of the new articles, and this is cutting edge. It looks like we may eventually, as physicians, be replaced by what they're calling dissolved doctors. It's using new technology, the constructed molecular versions of logic gates that operate in water systems. So what it is, they're DNA-based computing system molecules that are being developed that are nanoscopic machines that will exist in living organisms, sensing conditions and making decisions based on what they sense, then responding with actions such as releasing medications or killing specific cells. So, leading edge for those of you who want to keep up in electromagnetic or bioenergetic or scientific medicine, this is great. Almost every month, Scientific American has something about medicine in it, and I think that's well worth us keeping up with what physics is doing and how they are tapping into our physiological and medical world. Another one that I just finished, and I want to talk just a little bit about the genie in your genes. Tying this into what we've been talking about in the last couple of days, Dr. John Tapp, even though he was using a pharmacological approach to plaque, he talked about teaching genes to produce large particle lipoproteins. Dr. Sprecher yesterday used the term bathing genes with a new message. Dr. Ellithorpe, with her extensive intake, childhood, and birth history, why are the cell membranes being exposed to things and making the changes they do? Dr. Lavelle talked about 75% of our genes, that we're in control of them. And most of the research is saying that that's true. 35% are set, your eye color, this or that. But the rest of it is epigenetic medicine. And this epigenetic medicine and the new biology of intention, what this book is about, is very interesting because now we know genes are not set, like we used to think, not all of them. Many of them we can manipulate, not just with our environment, with the kind of medicine that we're trying to do, but with your thoughts and belief systems. And that is upregulating or downregulating our genes. And as medicine continues to listen a little bit to physics, I think we'll get more and more into this. And, the book with the genie in your genes, it's by Dawson Church, talks about, that genes are about storage and utilization of information. And researching genes without looking at the energy component of DNA is looking and analyzing a computer without plugging it into the power cable. So, Human Genome Project, 1990s, we expected to find how many genes? About 120,000. Anybody know how many we actually found? About 25,000. Good. I wish I had a prize to give you, but I don't. It's 23,688. All right. The Human Epigenome Project was kicked off in Europe in 2003 and in the U.S. 2005. So epigenetics and how we are by our thoughts, our beliefs, and energy fields around us are upregulating or downregulating medicine. We've had our biochemical hats on for the last day and a half. I'm going to ask you to open up a little bit, try to step out of the metabolic, which I love that world as well. I work in it in medicine. But I want you to open up and realize there are other things, and I think we know it, but now we've got more research to show that this electromagnetic body that we have, that is documented, is something that we're not talking enough about in medicine. There are many experiments that are being designed and continuing to be designed to show the bioenergetic body and the chemicals that are produced in that. In this book, they talk about, immune system, HIV, MAID study, mouse studies, actually a slight nutritional change in mice can take a little thin brown mouse that should, in its genetic offspring, be thin and brown again into fat white mice just by one little nutritional change. So there's a lot going on in genetic and epigenetic medicine. There are different types of genes. Some are experience-dependent genes. They're involved in activities or experiences such as growth, learning, and healing. There are behavioral state genes. They're expressed during periods of stress and emotional arousal. This is an interesting one. They're also expressed in different states of awareness, such as dreaming or dreamless sleep, which takes us back to Chinese medicine, when you look at their circadian clock, and if you wake up every night between 2 and 4 a.m., something like that, it's in a certain system, and there's an emotion attached to that you have unresolved anger or grief or fear, and that those are emotions maybe what's waking you up like clockwork at night, not some physiological process. So I think it's interesting, and we have a lot more to learn. All right. Let's get started in the actual talk. I just had to bring us up to date. We've already been through all of this with the introduction, so I won't go back into that. That in Arizona, naturopathic medical doctors can prescribe medications, do most of what an MD does. In fact, all of it. We have one little bit of pain management that we can't do, but we can prescribe morphine. But we can't do OxyContin. That's it. Otherwise, our license is quite open, and I've studied outside of that because, frankly, I've gotten kind of bored with the biochemistry a little bit. So, thoughts affecting our bodies and our health. There are some wonderful quotes by some wonderful physicians that are doing quite a bit of studies in this. And just knowing we've thought for a long time that diseased bodies are connected to diseased minds. And now with the epigenetic studies and the genetic studies, we're being able to prove that out. Bioenergetic medicine has been around a long time. Egypt and China and Africa, and documents documenting thousands of years ago using eels, electronic eels and so forth to heal the body. Been around a long time, was doing really well, and you can see in 1884, 10,000 docs in the United States, which was a large percentage at that time, were using electromagnetic medicines. Flexner report came along and we lost homeopathy, electromagnetic, we lost a lot with the scientific basis because we didn't know then what we know now to back up this electromagnetic body. It's coming back. I mean, what is an EEG? What is that? Measuring the heart's electromagnetic field. So it exists. If it exists, why can't we be thinking about it, using it in modalities to help heal as well? A great place for you to start, if this is completely new to you and you say, I want to see the studies, I want to kind of understand it. This book, Energy Medicine by James Oschman, called The Scientific Basis. It's a very good book. In fact, some of the slides I have in here are from Dr. Oschman with his permission. There are many, many books out there. Many books now, and they're coming out so fast that I can't even keep up with them myself, and this is my love. But this is a great place, so I would encourage you to start with that. So, do we think that the brain and the nervous system are the only control systems in the body, even endocrine system? We're saying no, we think there's another part of the body. If we try to explain an athlete doing what they do when they're in the zone, or a cheetah running at 70 miles per hour, it cannot be explained by the nervous system. It's too slow. We know 10 to 100 meters per second. That's how fast it travels. We can't explain some things that happen in our world with animals and with ourselves strictly by the physiological systems that we all studied in school. There's something else going on. And the proposed by many systems of medicine is that there's a living matrix, that there is an electromagnetic fields and currents that now we can measure in the body that is going on. So we can't get stuck just in our mechanistic minds of just the circulatory and nervous system with the endocrine system going through that. We have to branch out and start thinking about some other things because we can't explain what happens by those systems. All right. Whole body performance, and again, knowing that when we tap into one part of the body, we are tapping into the entire thing. So, what is the perineurium? You know, it's the connective tissue around the nerves. Almost every system in the body, has some kind of peri-system around it. And it's that system that they're finding has that electromagnetic field, that it's the perineural. And this has been articles in Scientific American as well. So you can go back to those old issues and find some of this as well. Here's one of them about the new frontier in neuroscience. So, 1937, we all know this gentleman, I'm sure, the synthesis of vitamin C, Nobel Prize winner. But he started talking about, in 1954, the electronic biology, or the solid state biochemistry of the body. So we've been talking about this. It just hasn't made it into mainstream medicine yet. And he even said life is too rapid and subtle to be explained by slow-moving chemical reactions and nerve impulses. So we're doing a lot, and we all see it in our practices with our nutrition, our pharmacological and nutritional methodologies. However, there's another system we can't ignore. This movie, if you haven't seen it, yeah, you might fall asleep the first few times. You know, it takes you a while to get through it. But What the Bleep Do We Know? Dr. Bill Tiller on there is a colleague and a friend. We co-lecture together. He's a Nobel laureate as well, a physicist. But some of these interesting things that are going on, Dr. Emoto's work, or anybody familiar with this? That, yeah, quite a few hands are going up. Great. We can poke holes in a little bit of that research. We could at the beginning, but now it's getting a little more solid. But we are what we think, and we are mostly made out of water. And that in the moment you think something, we are changing our crystalline structure, much less our water structures in the body. So, every culture, every medical tradition before ours, healing was accomplished by moving energy, moving it, changing that energy around. These are just a few that now have come back into our world a little bit, along with lasers and other kinds of technology. But if we remember that energy is what connects us to the cosmos, it's what connects us to ourselves and to other people in the room. The person sitting next to you is affecting your field right now. In fact, your heart will entrain with that next person and start beating at the same time if you're both a little bit in your where you should be. What happens to pendulum clocks if you put them on a wall, hundreds of them, and you start them at different times? What happens if we leave them for a certain amount of time? They entrain and they start beating together. Clocks. Schumann response, interesting. This is, I won't get into the details of it, but what it is, when lightning hits the earth, that is part of what creates the electromagnetic field of the earth. Around 7.8 hertz is the frequency that's created on the Earth's electromagnetic field when that happens. What we know, which is interesting, that Earth's magnetic field created by that Schumann response affects the pineal gland in the brain, specifically alpha waves. Now, how could that be, and why does 7.8 hertz make sense to us? Well, EEGs show that our brain likes to be around 7.8 hertz, okay? Well, another thing is how would it communicate? What is that? Well, now we know, which is kind of interesting. Let me get back to this a little bit. Magnetite has been found in homing pigeons, in migratory fish, and other animals that need to find where they are by electromagnetic. Bees are the same. That's their positioning, how they know where they are. And it was found that they had magnetite, which is the smallest magnet known to us, found that in their brains. So that was, everybody got excited and said, okay, now we know how they're doing it. Well, guess what? Not too many years ago, found in the human brain as well. human brain. I think it was in 1992, found it. So our ultradian or circadian rhythms are around that as well. What happens when we get jet lag, right? Our personal electromagnetic field, our circadian or diurnal rhythm, has defined its electromagnetic field and connect with where the new locale is. That's what's happening when you get jet lag. So, how do we change it? There are many ways. Healing touch, cold lasers, new machines like Jeffrey and Cher had experienced that brought one of the tables here for you called the SCHUMANN. These new therapies are starting to take hold, and we're able to measure these frequencies, and that's what's nice. We know that from practitioners' hands, we can increase cell growth, cell respiration, enhance DNA and protein synthesis, and project information into the tissue. They did a study. A group of scientists said, what is this, laying on of hands and Reiki and all this? It's got to be placebo. And placebo's real, but it does create change. But they said it's got to be placebo. So they had this whole team of different kinds of scientists, and everybody, went together, and they went to Qigong masters, Reiki. And what they found when they were measuring these is that when a practitioner would be in a state of meditation or in their healing state, that they emitted 7.8 hertz around. It goes from about 7 to 10, but it likes to be around 7.8 hertz from the palm of their hand. Not only could they measure it from the palm of their hand, but they could measure it in the receiving person on the other hand. What do we know about 7.8 hertz? DNA replication, cellular metabolism, healing and repair of the human body. So they came back and said, well, okay, there is something we can measure. Something is going on. So there you go. Some sensitive people can detect injury or disease. Those are few and far between. Maybe we have a few in this room. But to try to do that kind of healing work with your hands all day is pretty difficult. That's why I use a cold laser, and I can type in the frequencies I want. But there are people who can do that. These are just some of the things that you can look at later. EMF and cortisol studies that have been done, specifically with electromagnetic. We all know most of the toxicities, cell phones, microwaves, and so forth. It's about distance. I hope that you're keeping up with cell phones, and now we know the mechanism of why we think it's causing brain tumors. They've actually figured out which protein is being unraveled by cell phones. We know which one, and we know how it's happening. The International Radiological Society, about 5 years ago, put out an alarm and said any child 16 years and under should not be on a cell phone due to the rate of brain tumors, especially pituitary tumors. Didn't hear about it much here in this country, but now as we study and know more about the mechanism of what's happening, I think we need to pay attention. Get those cell phones off your ear. If it's hot, you know you're in trouble. So how do we know? How do we know there's an electromagnetic field around the body besides, an EKG? We started in 1924. A Nobel Prize was given because a galvanometer was introduced then to measure the electromagnetic field around the body. Now we have something called a superconducting quantum interference device called a SQUID, and that measures the fields around the body as well. And what's interesting about it is that it gives more detailed information in the space around the body than on the bioelectric measurement at the skin surface. Let me say that again. There's more information out here than on my skin surface. And it can measure for great distances, 5 to 15 feet away. I would tell you that Dr. Bill Tiller, however, who's the Nobel laureate that is doing studies on intention, he's got devices in practitioners' facilities, and he is showing that by certain people sitting and meditating about something, that they can, with intention, change the pH of water thousands of miles away. I'll give you something in a minute to get your head wrapped around how that might be able to happen. But he's got some interesting work going on. We know that if we put ourselves in a shielded magnetic field and we take away 7.8 hertz, that our thyroid, our pancreas, almost every endocrine system in the body is upset, plus our EEG waves change, our EKG waves change everything. Every physiological process in the body is disturbed when we're taken away from 7.8 hertz, our connection to the Earth's electromagnetic field. When they take them out of this, how do they get it back? They expose them to 10 hertz. That's been the treatment, close enough to 7.8. The heart is the strongest electrical generator in the body. It is not the brain. People think, where would it all be coming from? It is the heart. And Ampere's law, which is just a physics law, says that anytime you have a closed compartment and you have fluid going through it, you have to create an electromagnetic field. That's just physics. And that's what we are. So there, if you're trying to get a little bit more in depth, then maybe that'll give you a little bit better to get in there too. A lot of practitioners use heart rate variability. It's known in traditional medicine. It's the best predictor of post-MI morbidity. But it's used specifically in more preventive medicine, looking at the autonomic nervous system, for athletes, for performance. And we know that the more variability, the better, the healthier the patient is. These are some that are used, not just electromagnetic, but magnetoencephalograms, cardiograms. These are being used, mostly in research, but we know it's not just electrical, but it's also a magnetic field being created around us. Cortical areas related to the fingers are enlarged in musicians compared to non-musicians. That's also proves through with foreign language. So new studies are showing now, and a lot of literature on this, that our brains, we can keep them alive and keep them young, but we have to expose it to something different. The two best things are music, so some instrument you've never played before, or a foreign language. Again, not something you studied before, but a new foreign language. So if you want to stay smart, right, we don't want to lose those cortical areas or get the gyri flattening out on us, we need to continue to challenge and exercise our brain. All right. So this is just a little bit of showing you through some of the studies. This was in the American Journal of Cardiology in 1995, showing that frustration, what it looks like compared to appreciation. You can see the coherence of love, appreciation, those kinds of thoughts, and how we can measure them. And what's interesting, it's not just making a physiological change in your own body, but in the person next to you. So when that person that walks in the room that everybody goes, oh, it's so-and-so, it might not just be their personality. It might be the electromagnetic field around them that is so disturbed by all these anger and frustration, incoherent waves. That's what you're really feeling when they walk in and you go, oh, or that certain patient that you haven't gotten better yet. So making sure that we protect ourselves. PEMF has been used for it since 1980s. I've got a little new information on that. Is that, non-healing bone. Where does the potential, the actual potential is about 90 millivolts, right? But if we're in an inflammatory state, can go up to 120 millivolts. If a cell is in degeneration, can go as low as 30 millivolts. So some of these therapies started being used for non-healing bones. Now we've got cold laser, we've got many other modalities that we can use to help regenerate cells. And, heal a bone in half the time, heal a burn, wound management. These are well documented in these kinds of therapies. We can see that there's specific frequencies that have been shown to help in different types of tissue. And that's interesting because in some of the modalities that we use, we can actually type in the specific hertz. It's not 100%. There's certain ones we know, most of them we don't. So a lot of claims being made off of that I don't think we're there yet. But several of them, we do know which frequency works best. All right. This is just some more work. This is the therapeutic touch session showing that most of the activity from hand to body was at between 7 and 8 hertz. You can see the suite that it will go through and which tissues respond. And notice they're all low. They're all low frequency, not high frequency. This is not about power. And we know that quite a bit of clinical research has been done that cells and tissues respond to very weak pulsed electromagnetic fields. Those are important. If you're thinking about getting into this and you're looking at you know, which thing you might want to look into, or make sure we know all we know is they need to be very weak and they need to be pulsed. Those seem to be the best. I won't get into this. 30 acupuncture points on the bottom of the feet, cheetah at 70 miles per hour. Why is all this? How does the body do this? So if you can't, this is mostly for people who aren't physicians, but sometimes I think it's good to bring it back down for ourselves as well. What do you think is happening with an electronic car key or the TV controller? How can it do it from a distance? We are electromagnetic bodies, and we can. Acupuncture meridians are now thought not to be meridians, but to be that living matrix that we're talking about, crystalline structures. The reason why when you put an acupuncture needle in the bottom of the foot, in the bladder meridian that's supposed to help vision points, it will light up in the proper cortices of the brain. This was a study that was done to say, hey, you acupuncturists, you say if you put a needle in your toe, if that's true and it's going to help vision, it should light up in the occipital area. Well, it did, and what was interesting is that sound was just as fast as putting the needle if they did a sonopuncture, but guess what was faster than any of them was light. Light and sound work just as well as that needle, and it does light up in the appropriate part of the body. I don't know I'll get too much into resonance, but thinking about a radio receiver and transmitter, this I love because this points to it's not about power and it's not about distance. What this says, NASA sent out our first man-made man-made object to leave the solar system in 1983. 30 years later, they thought, can we communicate with it? It's been 30 years, and it is 7.4 billion miles away. Well, let's see if we can communicate. They sent out a message. They got it back about 22 hours later and said, wow, it's been 30 years, it's billions of miles away, we can communicate with this. So it was great, they did it for a while and they finally lost signal. Guess what, how much power it took to communicate? How much power did it take? Here's the big key. It had a power of 40 watts, which is comparable to a small light bulb. When we're talking about energy medicine, we are not talking about power of the lasers or power of the machines. It's weak, very light substances and signals that need to be given, and our human body responds to that as well. All right, this is another Nobel Prize winner talking about weak light emissions orchestrate the body. Emissions occur at the quantum level, and photonic communication enables every cell to know what every other cell is doing. So the living matrix and about a crystalline nature, and I think we tap into that obviously whenever we do the therapies that we do with our biochemical brain on, but we need to know that there's plenty of other things going on and in our evolution of where we've been and where we're going. So somebody else had a slide yesterday with obesity similar to this one, but this one's more about the thought process. Matrix consciousness, I won't get into this, it's almost a talk all in its own, but the thought that every cell and every tissue in our body vibrates at a certain frequency in health is becoming more and more mainstream and more documented. And that if a cell is not healthy, it's going to be vibrating differently. A new study that just came out, uterine cancer in women, they found that it had a negative charge to it. A uterus in a woman without cancer has a positive charge. So we're starting to get there, this one. Our consciousness. Every second, 11 million bits of information go into your brain. Your light, the sound, the person sitting next to you, the thoughts, what I'm saying, what you're thinking about lunch, all these things. 11 million bits. Where does it go? You can't pull that out of your head right now. If I ask you what 11 million bits of information just went into your head, most of it is thought to go to the unconscious. And so I tell practitioners that, and we all know it, but now we're starting to say, okay, I think I'm understanding why, is to trust your intuition and your hunches, because all that information is there. It's all there. So if you trust, sometimes that intuition is pulling on that amount of information, 11 billion bits, instead of the little bit of knowledge that we've got going on in our busy brain, especially with biochemistry. Just keep in mind, never forget to listen to your intuition when you're working with your patients and with yourself. So we're beginning to believe, groups of physicists and some physicians and researchers, that every tissue, cell, molecule, atom, and subatomic particle, and the space itself around that, responds to specific frequencies of electromagnetic energy. Let's go on. Just a few. Microcurrent, color therapy, sound therapy. I do color therapy in my practice. I use a lot of cold laser because I can type in specific frequency, and I love working with that. The Skenar machine that is here, familiar with some of those. There are other machines out there, but they're getting very interesting because they're not only measuring the electrical problems or electromagnetic problems in the body, but they're treating back. And I believe Jeffrey and Cher had quite a good experience with that, is why she's here. And you're from, what country was it? Australia, right. I know the original technology is out of Russia, though. Those Russians and those Europeans are ahead of us when it comes to medicine. They're not stuck in the model that we are, that we've got to have a double-blind, placebo-controlled, and it's got to be funded by the right people and so forth. They're actually more science-oriented, so they are doing the studies. We just haven't translated them to English yet, especially with cold laser. There are a lot of studies, and some have been done here in the United States, well documented on bone healing and on wound healing and burns. But there's many other things that these frequencies can do, and I can't wait for more and more studies to be done. The thought is that temporarily the cell membrane is opened up, that the frequencies go to the mitochondria itself to create more ATP. So what does that mean? It's stimulating the body to heal itself. What's far wiser than any of us will ever be, or any modality or new technique, is the body's own ability to know what to do. And if we can stimulate it and give it what it needs, then we're doing great. This is an interesting slide I threw in just about brain allergies, and that food cravings trigger reactions in the nervous system. Oops, let's go back. There you go. And they include depression, confusion, and a change in attitude and behavior. And these have been, there are studies on these. The brain can't produce a sneeze in reaction to inflammation. It can, however, change the thought, mood, or behavior, which creates a chemical issue that allows us to be able to sneeze. And in 1971, the first mental illness program established to detect brain allergies was established, and 90% of the patients admitted to that program were found to have wheat and milk allergies. Those are IgE, and I know we're talking about IgG, but most of us know those continue to cross over. A few books on that if you want to get more into the behavioral health with this. Excitotoxins by Russell Blaylock is a great one, and The Crazy Makers, and these are about food sensitivities and brain chemistry. And, you know, when I talk to behavioral health through our magnet hospitals, they were just blown away with even basics that most of you in this room know. Where's 90% of your serotonin made? In your gut. Yeah, we know about 70% of the immune system. But, you know, those in behavioral health don't know that. And then they go, oh, well, you mean we might have to do something with their gut to affect their mental state? And we said, yes, absolutely. Chemical sensitivities, these are all ones. I won't go into this because this is a well-educated group. But I would like to say that bioenergetic medicine, it's probably still thought in some circles as nonsense. However, we are having enough research now to back it up, and it's becoming a viable part of medicine. And I think as forward-thinking physicians, which you are to be here, don't forget about the electromagnetic body. Don't forget about your intuitions. Don't forget about this matrix and this space and what that means and what those communications mean. We are not just a bunch of chemicals and molecules. How they express themselves is the most important thing. That's when we started studying genetics. It's like, okay, just because we have a gene is not nearly as important as understanding what regulates it. upregulates or downregulates it. And I think a large part of that is not just the mechanistic things that we all like to keep our brains busy with all these wonderful functional medicine things that we do and that are fantastic, and we see great results in our patients. But if you want to get them to 100%, I think we have to at least give credence to and understand there's a whole other system in this body that we need to be able to work with. Again, if you're in this room, this makes sense to you. This is my favorite quote. Great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. So any of us doing anything outside of the box get some of this. But I love it when research catches up with us, like the research on the IgG. Thank you for doing that. That's fantastic. So that we do have some backup for what we do. But I would say, and I do clinical research out of my clinic as well. I mean, we do need to do it. We have to do it for those that are stuck within their box. But, and for me, I got to have a scientific basis for whatever I believe in as well. But I can't name one study. Someone show me one study you can't poke a hole in, either from the design, the intent, some way. Name one. So we cannot get stuck on double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. There's a whole other world out there that just because we can't explain it doesn't mean it's not real and doesn't exist. But I'm all for the research. I do it as well. But I would say that I applaud you for being able to step out of your box. And so I'm shoving you just a little bit more. And if some of this medicine, functional medicine and nutritional medicine that we're talking about is new to you and you feel like your head's doing this, I'm sorry to shove it just a little bit farther. But I'm just saying being aware is most of it. Being aware of what's out there, what's being done. And some of the best ways to keep up with it really are publications and research that are being documented and being published in things like Scientific American. I just think that's a great one, and not enough doctors are reading that magazine. We're giving it to the physicist and the chemist and the computer nerds. Let those of us who are medical nerds start reading that as well and keep up with those guys so that we can start using it in our practice. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay.
I just wanted to say we have about 10 minutes or so if we'd like to take any questions. Okay. Let me get a mic. Down front. Great.
Just raise your hand. Okay. How come you always have to sit in the front, doctor? I have to keep running up here.
Hi. Thank you so much for the great speech. I mean, it's very interesting. But you touched in a very important concept that I've been following through the years, and is the teaching from Ernest Holm, the book of Science of Mind. And basically, what he theorizes is that thought, yes, all the thoughts that we have, but affiliated or together with emotion, yes, is what is do a demonstration. So that's part of science of mind and also mind and body medicine. So all these ideas that, because we have thousands and millions during the day, but when we put that thought associated with that emotion is what we demonstrate that in our lives, in our bodies, and everything else. So
that's
thank
exactly
you for that.
right. And some of the, the interesting research out there now, they did a study with HIV and just belief systems, because this isn't just emotional attachment, belief systems. They found that the patients that believed in a benevolent God as opposed to one that was punishing had greater T-cell activity. They also found that if they felt loved as opposed to not loved by their connection to whatever spiritual source that they believed in, that their T-cells were much higher. So it affects immune system. So we're trying to mechanistically prove, that our beliefs, our thoughts, and our emotions, and we're getting there. We're getting some decent literature there for that. Quite a few other interesting studies. One was with maids, and this is on the weight loss thing. They did maids, and they brought in half of them, and they didn't change anything about the routine, about what they did in their day, but they told half of the maids, they said, you know what, when you clean those rooms, when you do your duty, you actually burn these many calories, and you should actually lose this amount of weight in this amount of time. That's fantastic. That's all they told them. They didn't change anything else. The other maids, they didn't say anything to, right? Well, the maids that they just gave the belief system that what I'm doing is burning fat, they did. Their BMI went down. They lost 10.5 pounds, all this stuff. So, I'm of the thought I need to tell myself, hey, sitting on that plane and lecturing all the time, I'm losing weight. But I can't get myself there because my scientific mind's in the way, but the maids weren't. So we're getting some good, decent studies to prove that, yep. Or at least give it.
I just have a question. I read something a couple of weeks ago that they are implanting these tracking devices in Alzheimer's patients and is that going to have an effect on, our well-being?
I can't see how it wouldn't, but most of those are in low frequencies, which I don't have a problem with. The dorsal column stimulators in pain management, when I asked, what's the main company that we use? Medtronics. When I asked Medtronics, I said, what frequencies are you guys using in that? Well, I don't know. I said, let's find out. Made them find out. They were in low frequency ranges. Now, I know they don't work as well as we'd 100% like for them to, but I didn't have a problem with the low frequencies they were using in the body. So I think it depends. High frequencies, and we know that like a cold laser that at 635 nanometers, okay, those are wavelengths. We know that DNA replication happens there, cellular respiration happens there. But when we go to an 810 laser, and this is not to say those of you that have higher powered lasers, but when we go to an 810 laser, sometimes the effects that we saw with the 635 doesn't happen, and in fact there may possibly be some DNA damage. There's just only one study that's showing that, but more power is not better. So really, to answer the question, I think if it's low frequency and low wavelength, I don't think we have to worry about it. It may actually be helpful in itself as opposed to harmful.
Question, can you explain what the color therapy is?
Yeah, it's frequency. It's all frequency, right? So we have a room whenever we do acupuncture or any kind of body work, massage and all. The whole room has LED lights, and I can pick a specific color or a rainbow of colors if they need balance, and the patient usually picks it for you. They go, oh gosh, because we rounded it cost me a fortune, this darn room. Rounded corners, rounded thing, have a thing on the top, so these lights flood the room. So you turn off all ambient light, and they're flooded with a particular frequency, a particular color. It's fantastic, and the reason why I liked the room is I had studied, there's a Peter Mandel system. It's a little laser, but it's colors, different color crystals that you can put in on acupuncture points. And that was a German that had studied this. There's a few weaker studies that have been done on it, but there are practitioners who do what's called color puncture instead of acupuncture. Okay, so we know it's all frequency-based, whether it's sound, whether it's, light, whether it's whatever. It's all frequency. So you choose whatever you think will work for you and your patients. I think it's all good.
Question.
Hi, I heard something called heart math. It's
Yes.
about brain weight.
Yes, those were some of the studies that I showed before. They're from Heart Math Institute. Interesting that they are looking at, that electromagnetic field around the heart because it is the greatest generator. And they're matching it up and doing studies on brain waves, on emotions, and showing coherency. And so for what we do know, and some of the studies that they're doing, is the more coherent our frequencies in our body are, the better off we are. And it becomes incoherent, then that's when we're in a state of flux, frustration, anger, those kinds of things. So they've got some interesting studies going on at Heart Math Institute. And that's on that heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is known. It was first researched at Cornell University, and now it is still, to my knowledge, the #1 predictor of post-MI morbidity. And it's by measuring that magnetic field around the heart and the variability of the wave. Coherence is where we're after. The problem with beta blockers, it puts them exactly right into a non-coherent field. That's what it's meant to do, but they're flatlined on their heart rate variability. So that's a study that I'd love to see long term.
Question in the back.
I just wanted to
sorry.
comment. We've had Sharon and I have had the pleasure of visiting Dr. Worden's office. If you are ever in the area and want to see an absolutely gorgeous, state-of-the-art facility, you must see it. It's really quite something. And that's having traveled the entire country, so it's quite a beautiful facility, and all that she's describing and more. The question that I posed to you is that I think one of the things about bioenergetic medicine, some of the other modalities, is that, I mean, I know doctors that may use this on themselves and like it and love it, but there's a fear factor that I wonder if you'd address, which is, you know, peer pressure and rules and regulations and doing things according to the book and all that.
Right.
Do you have any comments on how a doctor can get more comfortable with the notion of doing these modalities and perhaps avoiding trouble?
Right. Well, I think if we're trying to look for all evidence-based medicine 100%, then you need to stick with things. I was trying to get back to the last of the slide with Einstein coming across resistance. If you're going to be a champion for change and you're using things, then you're going to be the champion, and you don't care what the paradigm is. You know you're not going to change it, and you're going to get kicked around a little bit. And that's okay for some of us. Because I have a scientific basis in my mind that has I think, and that's where it is that if I know I have enough science that I'm comfortable with the modality, then I really don't care what the community is saying. I do, but I care what I see in my patients more importantly. If you have to, within the modality, if you're in the hospital setting and this and that, there is enough research now to give something to people to help them wrap their heads around it a little bit so you don't look too woo-woo and too voodoo. So we do have enough research now, Jeffrey, to be able to document a little bit of what, at least reason through why these may work. And most settings now are okay. They know the mind body and they go, yeah, okay, we know mindfulness and meditation and all that, and there's enough studies to know that stuff works. It's just, it's where you're at, I guess, per individual physician. Yes. And then she's got one up here.
Just very briefly, what's your favorite web-based clearinghouse for these modalities, technologies, etc.?
Yeah, my best stuff's coming out of Europe, but you can search PubMed. You can search, clinical studies that have been done on electromagnetic types of machines. Most of the better research is really Russian, and it's just now being interpreted into English. And we've got Taku, Dr. Taku has written several books, and she's on the web. You can find a lot of her studies out of Japan and Russia now that they've combined that are good. You can put in low-level laser or cold laser. Those will both get you hits, but there are other types of electromagnetic out there, and there's a lot out there, but not real well documented. Probably the most well documented at this point is low-level lasers. Yes, ma'am.
Could you talk more about the idea of intention and meditation and changing the pH of water at long distances?
Right, that's Dr. Bill Tiller's work. He has written several books, and he has a brand new one. Gosh, I don't remember the name, but Dr. Bill Tiller, Tiller, physicist, not a quantum physicist. He studied water molecules with GM for years. That was his area of expertise, was the structure and nature and crystalline structure of water and the changes it made. So he's an electrical and mechanical engineer. Now he's gotten into quantum, has to, but they literally have a group of practitioners, they're mostly doctors, honestly, or researchers, that sit in a circle and they meditate and think, and their intention is to physically change the pH of water, which he's got sites now, bicoastal. He's got sites now in Europe, and within that, and they have them all, they're all hooked up. And in that time period, when those practitioners are meditating, all of those satellites are measured, and that pH is changing, which, as we know, is hard to do. And what's interesting is that they have found that whatever frequency, whatever this is, whatever this message system is, it's not anything we can explain yet, but whatever it is, it travels faster through Earth than it does through air or water, which is interesting. But what are we closest to in physical makeup would be Earth. But it travels faster through Earth than it does air and water. So they've got some fascinating things going on. He's amazing. Every time I talk to him, it's something new. So it's hard to keep up with it. Yeah.
It's just interesting to comment when we submitted for the CMEs for this program to the American Academy of Family Physicians. I thought that we might have a little trouble with this talk, and we didn't. So that's good news.
Right, right. I think it's becoming a little more comfortable. Great.
Would you comment on the effect of cell phone towers on the human body?
Same thing, the EMF, and it's all about distance. So I think it's whatever height those towers are, you're supposed to be per foot 100 feet in distance from that, right? So per foot, if it's a 100 foot tower times 10 away from it. There's things, and again, you can Google this. There's a lot out there, but it's basic physics of how far that EMF field carries. And the literature's fairly weak in documenting that that's really negative to the body. There are some studies showing absolutely that's negative to the body, and others saying it doesn't do anything. So that's not clear. That's an area that needs to be cleaned up a little bit. But cell phones alone, that's become clear, that protein damage in the brain, that unraveling. So we can't help but think, yeah, all these other things. In Sweden and other European countries, the amount of leakage off of a microwave oven is 10 times less what we're allowed in this country. They're so far ahead of us when it comes to EMF documentation and regulations. We're going to know more, and in the meantime, we ourselves can talk to our patients about, we don't know everything yet, but we do have suspicion to think that these may be very harmful to our bodies.
Last question.
I wonder if you would comment on biofeedback. Do you think biofeedback ties in with this thinking of yours?
Absolutely. I mean, biofeedback is, the ability of the body. We're using a machine. We're using some kind of biofeedback mechanism for us to recognize that when I think this or I think about this, I can see something on a picture, and I can change that. So I think it's more empowering than anything else. How much treatment is in there, we don't quite know, but we think, where the treatment comes in is the patient to empower themselves to know that if I relax and I breathe and I get in this state, I can make the donkey jump over the the whatever it's supposed to jump over. So the power, empowering the patient to know that when they're in a state of thinking about their mother-in-law, that they can't make this screen in front of them do what it's supposed to do, but whenever they relax and then they think about their happy place, the power of what they're able to do on that biofeedback is huge. So it's all electromagnetic frequency. There may be, and there has to be, another energy field that we don't even know about that explains Bill Tiller's work and others. It's not electromagnetic. They're both too slow. So we don't know yet, but what we do know is that we are electromagnetic beings, that our bodies create a field, our fields are affected by other fields. We do know that, and I think we need to be careful. Why do we feel better in the mountains than in the sea? Why do we do that? Yes, ma'am. Are we done? Okay. Is there one more, or are we done? Okay. All right. Thank you. You can catch me after. Sorry. All right. Thank you.